Next, let's talk about strings. We know that strings store character or text values. So if we have hello world, this is considered a string data type. However, for this to be stored as a string data type, we have to insert this in either single quotes or double quotes. So if I insert this hello world inside a single quote, now it becomes a string data type. The first thing we notice is the color changes from black to red. And the red color is indicating now that this is a string data type. Now let's also insert this in double quotes. The same thing happens. Earlier, we created variables and assigned numeric values to those variables. We can do the same thing with strings. Let's create a variable and we'll call the variable pets. And what we want to do is assign a value to pets. What we want to assign is dogs. I'm going to execute the cell. So now we are saying that the pets variable, what's contained inside of it is dogs. So this is the value inside of pets. And now when we ask Python to print out pets, it simply gives us dogs, which is the value inside of pets. One thing to note is that variable names are case sensitive. So right now we have pets, one of our variable pets, right? And we can see that it's in lowercase. What happens if we try to execute this? So we have uppercase pets. We get an error that says name pets is not defined. And that's because there is a difference between pets with lowercase and pets with uppercase, because the name of our variables are case sensitive. Now, what if we assign the value of cat to the pets uppercase variable? Now, if we ask Python to print out pets, now we get the value of cat, which is stored inside of our pet variable. So it's just something to keep in mind that when you do create your variables, the case is important. Another thing you may have noticed is it is very easy to reassign new values to a variable. So right now we have a pets variable, which has a value of dogs. Let's see how easy it is to assign new values to pets. Okay, so let's go through this. Now, in a situation like this, first let's just focus on what's on the right side, okay? So we're saying pets, we know that the variable pets has the value of dogs, right? That's the value inside of pets. So we're saying pets plus lowercase pets plus uppercase pets equals to pets. So essentially, and let's actually just execute this, okay? And all we need to do now is print out lowercase pets. When we do that, we get dogs, cats. What's happening here? So dogs, which is the value that's inside of pets, is replaced here, right? And then we have uppercase pets, which is cats. Now we are assigning a new value into pets. So pets now becomes dogs, cats. The plus here, the operator plus here, and this is what, when we use it with strings, this is what we call concatenation. Essentially, we're just adding two values together, and this is adding cats and dogs together, and now we get dogs, cats. So now our pets that originally had the value of dogs is now dogs, cats. And that's how easy it is to override the values within a variable. And when you think about it, that's why it's called a variable, which means it can vary. It can change depending on what instruction we give. Another thing I'd like to talk about regarding strings is broken strings. Now, assuming we have a sentence like this. Okay, so we know this is a string data type, right? Now we know for this to be actually a string data type, it has to be inserted in quotes, and this could be a single or double quotes. For now, I'm going to insert this into a single quote. Now earlier on, we also identified that the color changes to red to indicate that this is strings. What do we have here? We see that there seems to be a broken part in the strings. And the reason is because we have this single quotes, or we have dozens, right? And we have this apostrophe or single quotes right here. And Python is thinking that, well, that this Peter up till n is as a specific string value, and from t to any more is a different value. So this string is now broken. So how do we fix this problem? And of course we can insert this into a variable as well. But the solution to this is we can simply, in this situation, instead of using a single quote, all we need to do is use a double quote. So I'm going to copy the same text. And now I'm going to insert that into a double quote. And now we can see that this is totally fine. We don't have this broken string anymore. And we can confirm that this is, there's a problem with this. If we were to just execute, we get an invalid syntax, right? Because again, this is not Python doesn't know how to process this because the string is broken. And if we were to enter this, it really just displays the same value back to us. Another thing I would like to show you, still pertaining to broken strings, what if we have a text like this? All right, so we have this sentence. Peter said, "I don't care." Why did it say that? In this case, we also have to insert this. We could insert into a single quote or a double quote. Let's say we insert this into a single quote. So right now, we still get this error of broken because again, we see the sentence, part of the sentence in black, which is indicating an error in the string. There's a problem with the string. The reason is because, again, we have a broken part of the strings. We have Peter said, "I don't care." So right now, Python is assuming that this is one string and this should end right here. But we know that's not the case. We have all those other strings. What if we were to substitute this with a double quote? We still get the same error because Python would still think that from Peter said up to this point ends this string. And now there's nothing to start this part of the string. So again, Python is confused. So the way to fix this broken string will be to insert the text inside 3 single quotes. To do that, I just need to click the single quote key on my keyboard 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. And now I can insert this string inside of the 3 single quotes. So we have 3 single quotes to start and 3 to end. And now we can clearly see that this is fine. And we can assign this a variable name, let's say message equal, and now let's execute the cell. And next we can print out message. Now to print out message, I would like us to use the print function. And this is a function we have not used before. In a later section, we will talk and use the print function. But for now, you can think of it as just when we execute a command, and all we do is we press Shift Enter on our keyboard. The print function does exactly that. It really just displays the output of whatever we pass. So for us now, what we want to do is we want to insert message inside of the print function. What we're saying is, I want you to print message. So I'm just going to type message. And when we still have to press Shift Enter on our keyboard, but now it prints the message. Peter said, "I don't care." Why did it say that? I think there should be a question mark, and that's fine. So this is the way we fix broken strings. And the recommendation is if you are inserting, if you have like a lot of text and you're not really sure the quotations that would be inside of that text, it's best to just embed that in 3 single quotes, because that will take care of any type of, whether it's a single or a double quote inside of the text. Earlier, we imported the math model and used 2 methods within that model. The cell method, which rounds up a number, and the floor method used to round down a number. Strings also has methods that can be used to manipulate string values. To use a string method, we just have to call the method to the string value, so we don't have to first import a string model from the library, unlike the math model. I'm going to create a variable, and I will assign the value hello world to the variable message. Now let's try some of the commonly used string methods. Assuming we want to change this hello world to uppercase, we can do that by passing a string method, and the name of the method is hopper. So this is the method. Now we can either pass this method directly on the name of the variable, or we can pass it on the content of the variable, which is hello world. To do that, all we need to do is we use the variable name message, we have a period, and now we have the method attached to the string. If we run this, we get hello world now in uppercase. The complement to uppercase would be lower. So right now we already have this as lower. So I'm going to create a new variable, and I'll call this message 1. And for this, I will have in uppercase happy birthday. Now, if we want to convert this to lowercase, all we need to do is we type the name of the variable, which is message1, and we have a period, and now we can use the lower function or the lower method to change that to happy birthday in lowercase. Another method we have is the title method. The title method changes the first letter of each word to uppercase. So let's use our variable message. We add a period and then title, and when we run this, we get hello world, but we see that the first letter H has been changed to uppercase, and the first letter W has been changed to world. Let's try another method. We also have a capitalized method, and the capitalized method changes the first word in a sentence to uppercase. I'm going to create another variable. I'll call this message3, and inside of it, I would say Python is fun and cool. All right, we save that. Now let's try message3 and capitalize method. When we run this, we notice that all of the first letter in the sentence is changed to uppercase. Now, so far we have used the method directly on the name of the variable, but we can also use the method directly on the value itself, so the string value itself. I'm going to click escape and just add more cells. So let's say we wanted to apply the upper function or upper method directly on Python is fun and cool. I'm just going to copy this and paste, and all we need to do is, and now this has to be in quotes, and now I can append the method upper to that variable, to this text, right? And now we can see that that changes. So yes, we cannot use the name of the variable, but we can also just use the method directly on the value. Let's I'm gonna try that again. I'm just gonna copy this And now I'm going to use the lower. Actually, let's use title. Now we see that the first letter of each word has been capitalized or in uppercase. So we have capital P, capital I, F, A, and C. Now, when we use a method on a string, the method prints out the string based on the type of method we use. You know, for instance, we use the upper to print out the string value in uppercase. We use the title to print out the values in title, right? But the method does not change the original value inside of the variable. And I can show you that by, if I run message3, we see that it's still Python is found in lowercase, just as we initially declared it, right? Python is fun and cool, all in lowercase. And after this, we did all this manipulation. We changed it to uppercase, we changed it to lowercase, we changed it to title. But then the method does not actually change the original value or the original string. It's really just printing it out the way we asked. So we said print it out in uppercase. It prints out this original text in uppercase. It doesn't change the text itself. And it also makes sense for us to see it that way because initially we had to use this assignment symbol or the assignment operator to assign this value to message. Now, when we use this method, we append this method to the message. We did not assign, we didn't assign an uppercase value to message3. So it's something to keep in mind that when you use a method, it prints out the string in the way you ask it to do, but it doesn't change the original value. And the reason this happens also is because strings are immutable. And I'm going to type that out here, immutable, which means does not change. The complement to that is mutable, which means changes. So the value we get when we use a string method, we can think about the output as a brand new value. Now, if we wanted to override message3, we can have something like this, message3 equals, now we are assigning the value, we are assigning the upper of message3 to message, and this should be 3. So if we do this now, and now if we print message3, we get the upper, because what we have done now is that we originally have message3, but now we converted it to the uppercase, right? By appending the upper method, and now we assign this to message3. So this now overrides the initial lowercase Python is fun and cool. So this is one way. If we want to override, we can do that by reassigning a new value, because this is totally a new value, to the variable. Before we try more string methods, I think this would be a good time to show you how to add comments in Python. And that's because, what I typed here is not a code. This is a comment. But we need to make this a comment, and all we need to do to make this a comment is type shift, or just enter shift and the key 3 on your keyboard, and now this makes this a comment. And what happens is that, let's say I choose to run another code. Let's say I want to print message. I can do that right here, and what happens is that Python ignores this 2 comment and just runs message. Now, if I didn't do that, assuming I'm going to take out the a number sign, I'm going to run this again. It's going to give me an error, right? Because it's thinking that a mutable right now is a code, but by passing this as a comment, Python simply ignores. It simply ignores immutable and mutable and runs message. So that's a way to add comment in, within your script or within your code in Python. Another method we have is the count method. And assuming we want to find out the number of times L appears in hello world, we can use the count method to do that. And now all we need to do is inside of the parentheses, we need to pass the character L to find out how many times does L appears in hello world, and it tells us it's 3 times, which is correct. We have L 1, 2, 3. If we want to find out the number of times, let's say I'm just going to copy this. Let's say I want to find out the number of times O appears. We get 2. Another thing we need to know when we work with strings in Python is this. Here we have hello world. Now, each of those characters or those letters, they all have a position. H has a position, E has a position, L has a position. And those positions are called index. The way this index is counted in Python is this. The first character is as index 0. The next character as index 1, and then 2, 3, 4. Now a space, when we have a space in between a string, as we have right here, this also counts as a position, right? So it's just not blank. There is a position, or there is an index that is assigned to this space or to this blank. So like I said, we count starting with 0. The first position is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it is important to know this because later on we would also be working with slices and be, manipulating our string data. So you need to know that all of these letters, they do have a position of their own. Now we have another string method, which is index, and the index method helps us to pull. It actually tells us the position of a particular letter or a particular character within a string. So let's say I'm going to type this out first. We have message.index. And let's say we want to find out the position of W. Now, if we type W and we enter this, it tells us it's at position or index 6. And we know that is true because if we count, we have H is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, and then the space is 5, and then W is 6. What if we want to find out the index of the letter, let's say the letter D? To do that, I'm going to copy this. Just going to paste, and let's change this to D. And when we enter this, it tells us that it's at position or index 10. Again, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Another method we have is the strip method. And I'm just going to make more space. Now the strip method is used to strip or to remove either a value or a leading or trailing space, and I'll show you what that means. So let's say we have, let me create another, let's say message 4, another variable, and for message 4, we're also going to use happy birthday. But now I want us to have 5 spaces before the H, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to have another 5 spaces after the H, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So remember I told you earlier on that all of those spaces also count as a position, right? So even the 5 spaces we have before H and the 5 spaces, so the leading and trailing spaces also count. Now, what if we want to strip away those spaces? And you might be thinking, why would we have this? And I'll show you an instance where this could happen. We can use the strip method to, and I'm going to execute this to save the value. We can use the strip method to remove the leading and the trailing spaces within the string. To do that, all we need to do is we type message4, which is our string, and then we use the strip function. And when we enter this, we can see that both the leading and trailing spaces has been stripped away from the string value. To verify that this is true, we can also use a function, a Python built-in function, which is a len function. And I'll show you how that works to confirm. So if we want to find out the total number of characters inside of the string, we can use the len function to find out. So if we type message for and we enter this, it tells us 23. And definitely happy birthday is not up to 23 characters. This is 13 characters. And so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we can see that message 4, as we have right here, has been, we have the 5 leading spaces and the 5 trailing spaces counted, which gives us the total number of 23 characters. Now, what if we pass the len function on message? Okay, so what if we pass the len function on the strip of message 4? So I'm going to copy this, and then I'm just going to say, and let's paste it first. All right, so we have message 4, and I'm going to have the len function. I'll open the parentheses, and now we have to close the parentheses, right? And now if we pass this now, execute, we see that we have 13 because the leading and trailing spaces has been stripped away. So now we just get happy birthday. Now what if we, instead of stripping both the leading and trailing spaces, we only want to strip out the leading spaces? We can do that using the lstrip function. So we have message 4, and now we have lstrip. When we run this, we can see that the leading spaces has been removed. We still have the trailing spaces, right? To strip, if we want to strip only the trailing spaces, all we need to do is we use the lstrip function to do that. So we have lstrip, and when we run this, now we still have our leading spaces, but the trailing space has been stripped away. A practical use of the strip function is when entering information into a form, or even when signing into an email provider, you have to log in with your password. Now, for example, I'm going to try and log into my email right now. I'm going to type in my password, which I'm done typing. Now, on purpose, I'm going to enter five trailing spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you could see that even though those are spaces, it's been captured by the asterisk that a value is being entered. And that goes back to, what we talked about, that even spaces, white spaces are counted as a value. Now, when I click on next to enter into my email, I shouldn't be allowed in because I just entered in spaces, which are values, which then changes my password. But notice what happens when I click on next. I'm still able to log into my email, and that's because on the back end, remember, of course, when you created your username and your password, all of those information would have been stored on the back end of Gmail within a database. So all that information is contained. But now you're trying to log in with your password that has spaces. With a strip function on the back end, that strips away those extra spaces that makes you able to log in into your email without having any issues. So that's one way I can think of right now as a practical example of where a strip function could be used. There are many more string methods which we can't cover, within the time we have, but I'll show you just like we went into the math model and we looked at the different methods. Oh, by the way, actually, my birthday is missing an R, but yeah, there should be an R there. So to check out all the string methods, if you click on help and we go to Python reference, now we can click on modals. And when you click on S, under S, we can see string. So we click on string, and at the top here, we can see string methods. If you click on string methods, it shows you some of the string methods, and some of this we've used already. We use the capitalize, there's the count. If we keep scrolling down, we can see there's a bunch of different string functions or methods that could be used. So, if you're interested in learning more string methods, you can always come to this place lower, and we use we have the lstrip, and so you can always come to this documentation and see the different types of string methods that are available and try them out. Okay, so let's open or create a new file. And once that launches, I will save this file as string operators, and we can save that. Okay. The first operator we will look at is the addition operator, also called concatenation. Okay, so let's say we have two words, and the first word being hello, and we have a second word which is world. We can concatenate or join both words together by using the addition operator. When we execute this, we get hello world. So we see that both words has been joined together. However, we can also see that it's almost both words are mashed together, which doesn't really make this readable, right? Now we can add a space between hello and world by simply, and I'm going to type that out again. So we have hello, and then we have our addition, and now we can have a blank space inside the quote. And then we can add the second word, which is world. If we execute this, now we have the space because the string, the quotes can also take on empty spaces, right? An easier way to achieve this is instead of having the space, and what we can do is I'm going to type it out first. We have hello, and then we have world. Now, what we can do is we can create a space right inside of this quote by just putting an empty space, and that creates the space. So we don't need to have the space separate. We can just embed or kind of include the space inside of this text or the string. When we execute this, we get hello world. We can also concatenate using the variable name. So assuming we have a variable called name, and let's say the name is Peter, and we have a second variable, let's say this would be a message, and in here we have my name is, and we can save that, and I'm just going to make a space here. Now we can say message plus name. If we execute, we get my name is Peter. Next, let's look at the multiplication operator. The multiplication operator does exactly what the name says, which is to multiply a string value with another value. So assuming we want to, let's say we have again hello world. Now, if we multiply this by 3, what we get is hello world 3 times, and again, let's make that space. Now we see that this has been hello world has been multiplied by 3, and we have hello world 3 times. Now you may be wondering why we do need this. Let's say we want to we need to insert a dotted line, or we want to create a dotted line. What we can do is we can have that line inside of the quote and then multiply this, let's say, by 20, and now we get that line. Let's say we want it to be just a straight line. We can do that as well. Multiply by 30, we get our straight line. And we can even use we can use star. Let's multiply that by 20, and we get that. We also have the in and not in operator. We use the in operator to check if a specified value is inside or can be found inside a variable or within a sequence of values. Let's create a variable, and let's call the variable info. And inside of those variable, I'm just going to type, I'll type a text, and I'll say my name is Alex, and I am 12 years old. Okay, so that's what we have inside. Just save that. inside of the variable info. Now, if we want to check if a specified value is within or inside of this variable, we can use the in operator to do that. Say we want to find out if the name Peter is inside of the variable info. All we need to do is we have Peter and we use the keyword in and the variable info. When we execute this, it tells us we get a false response because the name Peter does not exist inside of info. What if we want to check if the name Alex exists inside of info? And when we run this, now we get a true variable, a true response because yes, we do have the name Alex inside of info. Not in does the opposite of in. If we want to verify if a specified value is not inside of a variable, we can use not in for that. So using the same, let's say this time Sam, then we say not in info. When we execute that, we get a true response because the name Sam is not in any way inside of the text we have right here. We can say, let's say Alex, not in info. And when we run this, we get false because the name Alex is stored or can be found inside of info. Next, let's talk about slice or slicing in Python. Slice is used to retrieve a character from a given index. Assuming we have the string value happy. Earlier I told you that each character within a string has a position, and the position is called index. The first letter H has an index position of 0 because in Python the way we count, we start counting from 0 and not 1. So the first index is 0, the next index is an addition of 1, which is 1, and then P will be 2, the next P will be 3, and Y will be 4. So this means that because the index starts counting at 0, the last index position would always be 1 less than the total number of characters. Right now, if we look at the total number of characters is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but because we count from 0, Y will be index 4. Now we can use slice to retrieve a character based on its index. The square bracket is used to perform a slice operation. And we can find the square bracket. Those are the two keys to the right of the key P on your keyboard. So let's say we want to retrieve a specific character from happy. Now we have our square bracket and we use the index number to retrieve that character. So if we type index 0 and we enter, we get the value of the character of H because H is at index 0. I'm going to copy this. What if we want to retrieve index 3? Index 3 gave us P, which is the second P we have. What if we want index 4? I'm just going to change it right here. We get Y. And this is to, like I said earlier on, the total number or the last character will always be 1 less than the total number of characters. Because again, if we had counted this, happy is 5 characters, right? But then Y is giving us index 4 because we started our count at 0. Now, what if we want to start counting from, instead of counting from the beginning, we want to count from the end? We can also use a negative index to do that. So if we, let's say we have happy, and now if we type -1, we execute that, we get Y. So with the negative value, it starts counting from the end. Now the tricky thing is that yes, when we start counting from the beginning, we start at 0, but that does not apply if we're counting from the end. -1 would be the last last character in that string. So if we were to type -2, we get P. If we type -4, we get A. So this is the way we use slice to retrieve a specific character from within a string. What if we want to extract multiple characters at the same time? We can specify multiple indexes separated by a semicolon inside of the square brackets. So let's say we have the string Wonder Woman, all right? And let's say we want to retrieve more than one character. Now we have our bracket. So we want to start from the first index, which is 0. W will be 0, the first index. Now all we need to do is we separate the first index with a semicolon. Now let's say we want to extract 5, up to index 5. Now the way this works is this, and I'm going to run this first. So we get WNDE. And the reason we get that is this. So the first index we know is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you would think that this would extract index 5, but the way this works is this. It's saying extract up to index 5, but not including index 5. So this would extract all of the characters up to index 5. And that's why we have the R not included in the extraction. I'm going to copy this. Now, what if we want to extract up to index 3? We get 1. So we have 0, 1, 0, 1, 2, and D is the index 3, but it will not be included in the extraction. Now another way to get the same result is, because if we are starting from the first index, which is 0, this is as good as we don't have to. I mean, if you don't really want to type the 0, we don't have to do that. It's just going to assume that we are extracting from the beginning. So when we run this, we get the same result. What if we want to extract woman from Wonder Woman? And I'm going to copy this again. So now we can start from index 6, because W is index 6, so the second W. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're saying start from index 6. And now we can just say from index 6, extract everything from index 6. When we run this, we get woman. Now, of course, if we don't want to extract everything, we can say from, index 6 to index 8, and, that gives us WO. But like I said, if what we need is to extract everything else from a particular point, in this case, index 6, we just need to separate that by semicolon, and we get that extraction. Another way we can slice is this. I'm going to copy this. All right, so I'm going to remove this starting index point. So we know that if we want to start from index 0, from the first index 0, we can have 0, but like I said, we don't have to include that. So we're starting from the beginning. We have a semicolon as a separator. Now, if we're saying we want to end at, the last index, again, if you think about the way we did this, we also don't have to include any index number. So if we run this, it really just prints out the string for us. But what we can also do is that we can print out the strings in steps. So we can say, I want you to start from the beginning, right? I want you to end, I want you to run up to the end, but I want you to do that in increment or in steps of 2. So when we do this, we get WNEW. So what's happening here is that it prints out the first index. It skips the next index, which is 0O, and then it prints out the next one. It skips D, prints out E, skips R, prints out W, skips O, and just like that. So just to go through this again, we're saying start from the very beginning, right? We separate that with a semicolon, go up till the end, right? We separate that. Now we want it to be in increment of 2, right? if we were to change this to increment of 3, which we can, we get WD, WA, because now it starts with W, it skips 0 and N, it prints D, skips E and R, and then prints W, skips O and M, and prints A. So these are some of the ways we can use slicing for string values. The format function is one of the cool functions in Python used to format string values. To show you how the format function works, let's create 3 variables. The first variable will be name, and let's assign the value of Peter to name. The second variable will be, let's say, age, and let's assign the value of 20 to age. And the last variable will be hobby, and we will assign the value of, let's say, playing football. Okay. All right. Now we can use the format function to add all those 3 variables into a string. The way that works is that we need to create a placeholder, and a placeholder is represented by using a curly bracket. And together you just press Shift and bracket, so that should be the key next to the P letter on your keyboard. The curly bracket we have right here is what we use as a placeholder. I'm going to create another variable. All right, let's go through this. So we have a variable called message. Inside of the variable, we have this string values. We have my name is blank. This is a placeholder as indicated here. I am blank years old and I love blank. The way the format function works is that we can input all of those values into this placeholder. To do that, we append the format function, and we just have a dot. So we have the period, and then we pass the format function. We open our parentheses and we have it closed as well. Now, how do we insert those values into this placeholder? The way to do that is we just pass the name of the variable. So we have name, we have age, and we have hobby. All right, execute that just to save that. The way this works is this. When we run this command, when we request message to be printed out, name will be inserted into the first placeholder, age will be inserted into the second placeholder, and hobby will be inserted into the third placeholder. Let's message print. So now when we look at this, it says my name is Peter, I'm 20 years old, and I love playing football. And this is also where index comes to place, because the way the format function works is that it uses index to decide what goes into each of the placeholder. So the name is index 0, the next one is index 1, and this is index 2. So it's just going to follow that pattern and insert that into all of those placeholder. Now, and just to show you that it uses index, I'm going to copy this and paste it right here. Now, what if and this won't make sense, but what if we want to say my name is hobby, which is index 2. Now, what we can do is that we can rearrange this by just entering the index number. So if I enter index 2, I am, let's say, and again, this doesn't make sense. We use index 0 for name, and then I love index 1. So we're going, and let's just print this out. I'm going to save this. And now when we print out message, we have my name is playing football because we indicated that this should be index 2, which is hobby. So that's been replaced right here. I am Peter, years old, and that's because we now have name, which is index 0, been substituted, and I love 20, which is the age, index 1. So this is really cool because now we're able to string together different values. And what makes it even better is, and I'm just going to I'm gonna like 1 second, just create more cells. I'm going to copy this back because this makes sense. And just paste, save, so that we now when we print message, we have my name is Peter, I am 20 years old, and I love playing football. Now, one of the advantages of also having, all this information and variables is that assuming that Peter's age changes to 21 years, and maybe now, his hobby changes to swimming, right? We don't have to go into this text to make that change. Because think about it this way, if this was a book we were reading, right? And inside of the book itself, Peter's age shows up maybe 10, 20, 50 times, or Peter's, sport or hobby shows up multiple times. We don't have to go into those individual, texts to make that change. We can simply update that information in the variable. So we can say, Peter's age is now 21. We have that save. Peter's hobby is swimming. That's saved. Now, if we just need to also save this. Now we can run the message and we can see now that our text has been updated. We can see my name is Peter, I'm 20 years old, and I love swimming. So this also makes it really easy to make changes to our text. So I think this would also be a good time to talk about the print function. So far, anytime we need to output a message, as we have done all along, all we need to do is either enter shift, press shift enter on our keyboard, or we click on the run, right? So let's say we want to, we want to print out age. We just go shift enter, or let's say we want to print out hobby. We can just click on run and that prints that out. Now this is fine because we are operating as the developer. But let's think about this output, right? And we can also see when we output this, it's shows in single quotes. But assuming that we need to display this in the proper format, think about it this way. When you log into like your online account, it might display sort of like a welcome message that says, "Hey Peter, how can I help you today?" Or "Hey Peter, welcome back." You don't want that to be displayed in quotes, because this really is on the back end. So the way to display that properly would be to use the print function, and all you need to do is you type print, and then inside of the parentheses we just type message. And when this is printed out, you can see that this is now printed out without the quotes inside. So we have it properly printed as an output. So going forward, we will be using the print function to display our outputs. So far, we have learned about the int, float, and string data types. There are times that we may need to change the current data type of our data into another data type in order to perform certain tasks. We can use some of the built-in Python functions to achieve that. We know that the number 25 is an integer. Number 7 is also an integer. We also know that a number like 3.5 will be a floating data type. Let's say 20.6 will also be a floating data type. And we can, of course, confirm this by using the type function. Let's use the type function there. And I'm just going to take this off. When we run this, it tells us this is an integer. If we use the type function for 20.6, it tells us this is a float data type. What if we want to change an integer like 25 into a string data type? We can do that using the string function. And the string function is just str, which is string. And then in parentheses, we have the integer 25. And when we run this, what we get now is a string data type. And it is a string data type because we can see that 25 is now inserted or embedded inside of a single quote. We can also, what if we want to change 20.6, which is currently a float data type, we can also change that into a string data type. And all we need to do is we have the string keyword, and then we have the value inside of the parentheses. And what really just happens is that Python, all it does is it just insert the values inside of a quote. Now you may be asking, why would we want to do this? Now, think about it this way. Let's say you've probably filled a form or some sort of registration, and you have to put in your telephone number into that form. Now, some persons might choose to enter a telephone number like this. Let's say 304 577 3434, and for this we're using a 10-digit telephone number, so this would be valid. While another person can choose to write enter their telephone number and enter 304-221-2233, which is also valid. You might get someone else that goes that enters their telephone number as 301, and so we have 301 in parentheses, and then we have 223, and then 221. Now all of these are valid because it represents these are different ways in which we can capture a telephone number. But remember, while this is an integer because they're all numbers, right now we have these two dashes. That's a symbol, right? So that's, if we were to capture this, and we also have this other one that has 301 in parentheses. Now remember, we need our data to be structured as we save them in our database. How do we interpret all of this? This is going to more than likely break our system, because now we have different, Python will find it difficult, or whatever program we're using will find it difficult to interpret this data type, because it's not just numbers, we have this value. So what we may want to do is that we can set up our system such that when a user enter their telephone number, whichever way they enter, whether they just enter the numbers or they add a dash or they add a slash or parentheses, we want our system, or Python, whichever programming language we're using, to automatically change their input into a string data type. That way all of our telephone number is consistent. So now we can have something, so 301, what we just have, this now would just be inserted into, whether a single code or a double code, and we can insert, all this as well. Sorry, I'm just going to take that out. And when we insert this as well. So now we now have a consistent data type, because all of those values are now inserted inside of a quote, which makes it easier for Python to process or to read this data. We can also change a float data type into an integer. So for 20.5, so when we run this, so basically what Python does, it pretty much chops off anything after the decimal point. So we just get 20. So even if we were to, let's say we have 20.9, it's not going to round this off, up to like 21. It pretty much just chops off, any digit after the decimal point. If we want, we can also change an integer into a float data type, and for that we use the float function. So let's say we want to change 3, which is an integer, into a float data type. What Python just does is to add a decimal point and then add a 0, and now this becomes a float data type. We can also change a Boolean data type into a string. So let's say, and let's type out the function first, and we know true, this is a Boolean data type, true or false, both of them would be a Boolean data type. We can change this to a string. If we execute this, what we see now is, true is now inserted in quotes, which now makes it a string data type. And like I said, we can do the same thing for false. Now we have false as a string data type. All right, for this project, we want to create a bill payment interactive system. The way the system works is this. once a user logs into their account to check their account balance, we want to ask some questions to verify who they are and subsequently provide their account balance. Listed here is some of the steps we need to take to get this project going. The first thing is I would like us to create a variable. So we'll create a variable and the name of the variable will be account balance. Next, we create another variable with the name due date. For the account balance, you can actually input any amount you wish. Same for the due date, you can enter in a date as well. Now, before we provide account information to the customer, we want to make sure we are providing the information to the right account holder. So we need to confirm certain information. And for this, we just need to confirm the customer's name. Once we do that, we will create a variable, and I would explain why we're creating this variable as we work on the project. Then this next step is we want to greet the customer, sort of like some complimentary message before we go ahead and perform any type of task. And the next step would then be to ask if the user if they want to find out about their account balance. And if they do want to do that, then we provide that account information or the account balance to the user. All right, so let's create our first variable, and the variable will be account balance. Okay, so for me, I'm just making the account balance $250. Now, the reason I'm putting this in strings is because we have the $sign. So, it just makes sense to have that in string. Next, let's create another variable, and this would be due date. All right, so we have the due date as, for me, is January 25, 2021. Again, you can use any value for both the account balance and the due date. Now, for the step 3, which is to confirm the customer's name, we will use something we've not used before, which is an input function. Now, input function helps us to accept an input from a user, so we can ask a user a question, and when the user enters their response, the response is stored. I'm going to show you how to do that. So we type input, and because it's a function, we have our open and close parentheses. And now the question we want to ask, and I'm just going to say, let's just say, hey there, please confirm your name. All right. And I'll just have a semicolon there and a space, and I'll explain why we're doing that shortly. So to explain the input function again, the way it works is this. We have this message inside of the function, right? Inside of the parentheses, rather. What happens is that once we execute this will be presented to, in our case, a customer, and then the customer is supposed to enter their name. So now, once this is executed, let's say the customer enters the name as Alex, and I enter this. What happens is that the value or the name Alex is now stored within this input function. So it kind of like it captures that the value that's been presented. And this is why we need to create a variable so that we can store this value inside of this variable. So what we can do here is we can say name equals, I'm just going to copy all of those input statements. So any answer or any response we get from the customer will be stored inside of the variable name. All right, so let's run this again. So it's going to ask, hey there, please confirm your name. And now let's say the name is Peter. I'm just going to use a different name, Peter, right? So that's been entered. And I can confirm, I can verify or prove to you that Peter has now been stored in name and all we need to do for that is let's print out name. If I print this out, we get Peter, right? So it shows us that the value that has been entered by our potential customer has been stored inside of this variable name. Okay. The next step is to greet our customer, and we want to greet them by their name. So we want to personalize our greetings, right? So to do that, all we need to do is, and we'll use the print function, but I'm going to write out the text first, and let's say want to say welcome back, and we want to use their name, right? So we can have welcome back, and then we can we can concatenate that with the name of the customer, and all we need to do now is just type name, right? So let's use our print function to do that. And, okay, so we get welcome back Peter, and let's just make a space here. So we get welcome back Peter, okay? And the next step then would be to ask the customer if they would like to know their account balance. So the next step is we want to use the input function again to ask the customer if they would like to know their account balance. And I want us to create a variable for this as well, and we just call the variable message. So the message will be equal to the input of, and now would ask our customer if they would like to know their account balance. So just say, would you like account balance? Question mark there. So now once we execute this, then we're going to pretend the customer says yes. So yes will now be stored inside of message. All right. So the last step here is we want to provide the account balance to the customer. So I will create another variable, and let's call this balance info. So like balance information. So then what we want to do is we want to print out the account information, but we also want to include the name of the customer. Okay. So for that, so now let's provide the account detail or the balance information. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So what we have here is we want to provide the account information to the customer, right? So we have sure, and now we have a placeholder that's going to, the name will be imputed into this placeholder because it's the first position. So then we have your balance is, and then we have the account balance will be imputed into the second placeholder, all right? So let's execute that to save that. And now we can print, if we print balance information, we get, sure, Peter, your account balance is $250. Now, if we want to be even fancy, we can capitalize Peter, right? We can make this capital P. To do that, what we can do is right here where we have the name, we can just append the capitalize method. So if we go dot capitalize, okay, and let's save that. So now if we print this out, we can see that the name Peter is now capitalized or in uppercase. Oh, by the way, I want us to also include the due date. So right after this placeholder, we can say, and your due date is, and now we add the third placeholder, and now we can add, I'm going to see, we have due date, due underscore date, okay? So let's save that. So now if we run this again, we have the complete statement. So sure, Peter, your account balance is $250 and your due date is January 25, 2021.